All right. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to another future-focused weekly update where hopefully I'm doing my job of keeping you 10 steps ahead of what's happening at the intersection of business, technology, and the human experience, and just sharing context and things to consider as we wrestle through some of this crazy, chaotic stuff. Each week I wonder, is there going to be stuff to talk about next week? And each week, I am never disappointed by what pops up. And and if you've listened to a previous conversation of mine and you go, well, this is what Christopher thinks. Well, be careful, because each week I get to the end of the next week and go, you know what? I would probably revise or edit some of the things that I think or how I look at these things. So anyway, all that said, hopefully you find it helpful. Thanks to those of you who engage and send me notes and share things along the way, and even some of the constructive feedback. I'll just continue trying to make this better for all of you. And if you would do all the social things, like, share, subscribe, whatever it is, tell a friend, leave a review, that good stuff. I always appreciate it. And I do read and see all the stuff that comes through. So thank you for that. I've got my usual 4 for this week. I've got several big technology developments, 2 technology developments, one related to leadership and one related to the apocalypse. So there's your teaser. There's your teaser for what we're going to talk about. And this week, I'm not going to tell you what order they're coming in, although the show notes do that for me. So with that, let's get into the first one. If you have not heard of Manus AI agents got a lot of attention this past week. And I mean, people have been saying all year that 2025 was going to be the year of AI agents. And we're already seeing massive advancement in this. And Manus AI, it's a Chinese company, kind of, I don't know, lit the internet on fire with their multimodal AI agent that the demo, I've seen the demo video. I mean, it's pretty impressive with what it can do. It was able to do a lot of different tasks, which when I say multimodal, I mean, it's able to perform lots of different tasks all autonomously. And the thing with Manus specifically was it's relatively inexpensive. Now, I also want to mention that one of the other big kind of newsworthy things happening is OpenAI announced its $20,000 a month AI agent. So OpenAI is also coming to market with one. And again, these agents are designed to be, depending on who you talk to, they'll say they're human replacements. You'll hear that from the tech companies who are selling these in, saying, guess what? You won't have to hire these people because now you'll have these agents. I think other people are more in the camp of, well, they're augmentations, they're ways to support, to enhance the workforce you have. But thinking about OpenAI, I mean, if you're paying $20,000 a month, you're probably not tacking that on to one of your senior professionals and saying, hey, we hired you a $20,000 a month AI assistant to do your work. So take that for what you will. I'm in plenty of leadership conversations and have many concerns about where we're going with AI agents, but it's becoming a reality and a real threat to jobs and employment, and not necessarily because of, as you'll hear what I have to say on this, not necessarily because of what they're able to do, but what people believe they're able to do. So all that said, Manus AI really took the storm because if you can go to YouTube, you can look it up. Look up Manus AI demo and you'll see it. And they have it doing a couple of different activities. Like they ask it to help it plan a trip for somewhere. And it's a combination of deep research and not deep research, but that kind of thinking, like deep research and analytical activity. You can ask it to then generate, you can tell it you want to do a report and it'll generate all the reports and create all the stuff. You can even have it set up a website and put all this up, again, all on its own without any direction. Now, if you're listening to that going, that's amazing, this is the best thing ever, we'll talk about that. But at the same time, if you're hearing that and going, oh my gosh, this is the end of employment as we know it, which ironically, I was sitting with my kids last night and we happened to come across a YouTube video that was talking about, the inevitable World War III that's coming and the end of unemployment, or the end of employment. And I love going through that stuff with them because we just talk about it. We talk about what's real, what's not, how to think about this and how to process this. But Manus's agent is certainly powerful. Overall, I've looked at some other reviews of other folks that have used it. So just so you know, it's not something you can run out and sign up for. It has gotten so popular that it's invite only, and invitation keys are being sold for thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you want to play with it, you can either go spend thousands of bucks, or you can wait a few months, because what is groundbreaking this week isn't going to be groundbreaking in probably by the time I record next week's episode, and there will be 10 other competitors doing the same thing. So I would just say, first of all, one, if you're getting too excited about it or you want to run and test it out, maybe just wait a little bit, because it does have some issues. I've looked at a number of different reviews and people who have actually experimented with it. It's not everything it claims to be, but it's further evidence between this and OpenAI's $20,000 a month agent that there's going to be a lot of companies evaluating and having to make decisions about, do we hire a person or do we implement an agent? Because again, $20,000 a month, I know there's plenty of people who would go, good grief, like that's way more than a person. And that is expensive. Manus isn't anywhere near that expensive. But either way, it's not free. Okay, so these agents aren't free, but the cost of them is going to continue to come down significantly. And as it does, more companies are going to be challenged with wrestling through, do we hire a person or do we choose an agent? Now, my issue with that line of thinking is, I don't think it's the right kind of thinking. It's not a zero-sum game of, do we do it or do we not? Now, in terms of Manus, one of the most thoughtful reviews of it was done by MIT. They did a technology review, and they actually put it through the ringer on 3 different scenarios that were pretty robust. So the first one was let's see, what did they do? I'm trying to remember exactly what they were, but you can look this up. You can go to technologyreview.com, look up Manus review, and you'll see they ran it through the ringer. And their conclusion at the end was actually about what I expected it would be. If you have no programming background, if you're not a deep research analyst, if you're not somebody who's familiar with how to do data analysis and do extensive research, it's really helpful. It's going to do a heck of a lot better of a job than you would being inexperienced and going out and trying to wing it. Okay. They compared it to a really skilled human intern, which I would agree. That's about what I would expect with it. But even they acknowledged it was not smooth sailing. I mean, it took longer than you would think. People talk like, oh, this is great. It's going to do the work of millions of people in seconds. And granted, it does a lot of work in a short amount of time, which I think is going to be risky because it's going to feed this whole instant gratification of like, why did it take you 5 minutes to research this topic? Well, good grief. Because we had to think through even what AI came up with and validate, was it accurate and all this. But it also had a pretty high failure rate. Either it just straight up crashed or what it came back with wasn't accurate. Manus does have a more accurate response in its research, or it's more accurate than OpenAI's deep research, but it's not perfect. And so it still has to be checked and validated. And, so it's not perfect, I guess I would say. Now, what's so appealing about Manus is it's extremely inexpensive by comparison. It's like a tenth of what OpenAI is. So you're thinking $20,000 a month versus $2,000 a month. Now, if you think about that, spending $2,000 a month for this kind of access, you can see where a lot of companies would go, hey, we usually pay, I don't know how many interns to do this kind of work. Why don't we just get a bunch of licenses to something like Manus? And that's today, it's $2,000 or $20,000. I'm telling you, you give this a few months and it's going to come free with every AI package you have. Just like deep research, you had to get this and now it's just included in everything. Everything that you're seeing is very quickly just going to become what's expected from everyone. But to those of you who are getting super excited about it, here's what I will tell you is that I watched these demos over and over and, watched as people said, oh, see, it can just do what humans do with no input. And I went, that is not an accurate assessment of what it's doing. Yes, it does a lot of things autonomously. And that's a good and a bad thing, because even some of these demos, and I watched some where they went sideways, it was like it was moving so fast, you didn't even have time to catch what mistakes it was making until it was already done. And if you think about some of the high-risk things you might want a research analyst working on, you kind of don't want to go in front of like your shareholders before a board meeting, having just gotten something hot off the presses with no validation and go, speak confidently about how it is, only to find out that like, oops, turns out we had a bunch of hallucinations in there that, yeah, I know we went public with this, but that wasn't accurate. So you still need people involved, and looking at how it was done. Yes, it lowers the bar for experience, but I was engaging with somebody on Substack the other day, and we were talking about the fact that it's funny how if you're a subject matter expert on something and AI does something, you notice that it's like half right. Like if you know what you're doing, you look at what it does and you're like, yeah, I mean, I guess, but this is not accurate. And I wouldn't do that. And that's not really the right way to go. No, gosh, absolutely not. This would do that. And I think about it as like book smarts versus street smarts. It'll give you all the technically correct information with a bunch of failure rates in it, but it doesn't really have the like practical contextual experience that people do. Now you might say, well, an intern doesn't have that either. Okay, that's fair, but maybe that's okay because maybe AI can replace a lot of the grunt work an intern is doing. And now you're focusing them on teaching them the context and helping them look for the failures in the AI so that you don't end up spreading a bunch of stuff. So to me, I know there are tons of companies who are going to look at this and go, this is great. We can plan on cutting back our workforces. We can do workforce planning and we'll have, an AI budget and we'll have a human budget. And we'll lower our human budget and up our AI budget. I think companies that make that mistake are going to pay heavily for it. And so if you're in that camp, I would very much caution you. Sure, these things are only going to get better, but the limitations they have are always going to be limitations. It's inherent to the design. And as much as you hear, no, we're going to perfect that, we're going to close that gap, we're going to do this, it's like, that's just not how the technology works. And so I would just really caution you. Now, if you're somebody who has seen these videos or you go look at them and you go, oh my gosh, that's my job and it just did it. Yeah, I've said time and time again, and I stand behind it. Your job as you know it will be dead. As you know it being the key phrase there. You need to make sure you are deeply understanding your subject matter area, that you have strong perspectives and understand and can think critically about things, and that you're not just going through the motions. Because if your job is just to go to websites, compile the websites, dump it into PowerPoint, create a website based on the PowerPoint that you created and push it out and send a marketing brief, I mean, yeah, Manus can do your job probably vastly better and faster than you. And that's just the reality of it. So should you have reason for concern? Yes, you should. And you need to keep your skills sharp and you need to really understand what it is and be growing and developing, or you are going to be in big trouble, because this is just going to expand these capabilities. And I didn't include it this week, but the humanoid robotics capabilities are just continuing to expand. So nobody will be immune from this. And Manus AI's launch and OpenAI's agent are just the tip of the iceberg, and we're only seeing the half of it. So is there reason to be a little concerned? Yeah. Should you be completely changing your strategy and going all in on AI? No. But more to come on this, and I'm going to be following this along, but you just wait. These agents, it's going to become like second nature. I mean, everybody's going to have one, and I think that's where, again, we're just going to adjust to it, but I'm convinced we're going to go through some really, really, really rough seas as we work through this, as companies make stupid decisions about this stuff. All right. So let's move on to the next one, which is my other technology one. I saw this the other week and I was like, interesting. What is this? So Australia made the news because they came out, and they're not the only ones that are working on this, but they successfully had created a biological computer. They might be like, what is a biological computer? Well, it's a machine that actually has living brain cells combined with technology, combined with electronics. There's like 800,000 neurons, like live brain cells that are grown in addition, actually hooked up to a computer chip. And it works. That's the crazy part. They actually taught this biological computer using human neurons, or using, I think it was a combination of humans and mice brain cells. But either way, the point is real brain cells combined with a computer, and they taught it to play Pong. Now you might go, 1960 called, like it wants its technology back. Yeah, at this stage, it's not like, whoa, like don't think your laptop's going to have a bioprocessor in it in 2028. That's not what's going to happen. That's not the point. But the fact of the matter is they literally grew human brain cells, connected it with this, and actually have a biological machine running. And what's really interesting is, so they send these electric signals to the neurons, tell them what's happening. And just like in a human, it learns and sends signals back. And it tries to accomplish to win, and it doesn't like to lose, and it adapts. And it got better over time at playing this game. So it actually they actually were able to create a biological machine that adapted and learned without any coding, just simply like you would program a human. Now, it is different than a computer. Okay. So, like I said, it's using real brain cells versus like a silicon chip and all that. You're not programming it. You're, teaching it. Hang on one second. I'm going to pause this and I'll be right. All right. And we're back. So it's actually, you're not programming anything. You're, in a sense you are, but it's different. You're not typing code in and then executing it. It's actually learning through experience. So yes, you're sending electronic circuits or, signals through the brain cells, and then they're, reacting to it and it's learning. But it's different fundamentally than how an electronic computer would work. It's not nearly as fast. It's not nearly as structured and rigid. So it's far less predictable, just like people, but it's extremely flexible and it adapts and learns. It is ridiculously energy efficient, and digging into how they actually have to keep the cells alive and the biologics they had to do and build around this thing to keep this set of neurons alive. Like, you don't plug it into a wall, because think about your body. You're not plugged into anything. We eat, we breathe, we do this stuff, and we run. And it actually works that way, which is just absolutely fascinating. But it's highly, highly efficient, which is a major problem with traditional computing, in that traditional computers require a ton of power. It's a major problem with all these AIs. We're just sucking the energy out of the earth to try and keep them running. And this did not. Unlike a computer where what you're getting, though, it's unpredictable. So, it really truly is a fascinating breakthrough. And I was digging into it myself going, this is kind of nuts. Like, this is crazy. But like I said, you're not going to be buying the MacBook Mini Bio in 2026 or 2020. It's not, it wouldn't even make sense to do it that way. If you really think about it, who really wants to go to your computer and it's like raising your child? You're like, that's not what I wanted you to do. No, come on. And then over time, over 20 years, it finally can, do something. You know what I mean? It's not that. And it's very basic now, but the fact they successfully did it, like everything else, once you cross that line, then all of a sudden it just takes off and we start seeing things. And so the goal is to move people to these hybrid computers, because again, if you think about some of the issues we run into with AI and processors and computing, they can't think and adapt and learn like people do. So could this be an innovation breakthrough that helps us cross that boundary? My take on it is probably not the way, some of the researchers think. And I know I could probably, get into some heated arguments with people about that. But my personal take, and anybody who knows me knows my world, my personal take is we're not just biological material reacting to electronic stimuli and then, changing our neural pathways based on that. I think there's a lot more going on there. I don't think we're going to see that happening in a biological computer. Now, will it work radically different? Yeah. Will it fill in some of the gaps in a way that a traditional computer can't? Yeah, I firmly think so. But it's not quite going to get there. But there are people who are now concerned, like, oh my gosh, we're using human brain cells. Is this thing going to become conscious? Which to me, then I just end up going like, well, what even, how are you defining consciousness? And a lot of times that's met with like, well, it's circular reasoning. Well, you're conscious because you're conscious. Okay. So it's going to open a bit of a door now that we're here, because now people are already going, well, hang on, we're dealing with live biological material that is responding and reacting, and it is responsive and in some ways alive. So we need to have rules around this. We need to have regulations around it. How could this be misused now that it's thinking more like a person? Could it be used to do things like better surveillance or hacking, or could it be weaponized? Which, of course, could things get out of hand with ethics? Of course, all these things are things that are now going to have to be examined and explored because we have successfully created a biological computer. And there's lots of players now who have already been, but will just now continue to learn from this development and want to get into the space. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see where it goes and how. But that's an interesting development when it comes to this. In terms of some of the things we might be able to see out of this, I think this could open up a lot of doors for cognitive research and understanding the human brain, some of the cognitive disorders that we often don't know a lot about or know how to cure could lead to some real development in things like that, ways to potentially regrow brain cells or, reverse cognitive disorders or cognitive damage, things like that. It could be used to help enhance AI. I think the implications on efficiency are huge. Now, granted, okay, but we got to be careful with this stuff. I mean, there's some real risks associated with it. We can't just ignore, and we can't just go, sweet, biological computers. Let's just go for it and see what happens. And I'm sure it'll be fine. But it was a very exciting and fascinating breakthrough in terms of how they actually grew these brain cells, how they connected them up, and how they actually are teaching these first of all, just keeping them alive to me was like, this is so crazy that they're figuring out how to do all this. So it's an interesting step and leap forward in advancement, even though the advancement has led us to play, 1960s video games. But hey, it's fine. We all started somewhere, and that wasn't really that long ago in the larger landscape of time. Okay, let's jump to number 3. One of my favorite CEOs, the CEO of Starbucks, made the news for coming out with a very bold email to his leaders, because they just went through a massive layoff. They got rid of, I think, let me look at my notes. It's like 1,100 people or something. It's like one of the biggest layoffs in their history, something like that. So Brian Niccol is their new leader. And so they went through these big layoffs, and then he came out and he had this bold statement for all the people who were left. And his statement was built around 3 key points: work harder, take ownership, and get back in the office. So in some ways, I feel like he's saying a lot and he's also saying nothing in this. And, as I reflected on where they're at, what they're going through, because if you don't know, Starbucks they've been going through a lot of challenges, right? They're not doing as great as they were, as many companies. They're having to completely rethink what they're doing, and they're having to go through all this. And so as I looked at his message, there were definitely things in it that I went, okay, like I see where you're going with this. He wanted to encourage people and say, hey, those of you who are still here, you're safe. Like, we're not going to be doing this again. I really get nervous whenever senior leaders say that, because almost never do they mean it. It's usually just platitudes, and they end up putting themselves in a dangerous position when you say you're safe. If you're still here, you're safe, because really there's a subtext underneath that, which is you're safe until we decide that you're not safe again. But he did acknowledge that things are not great and they're in turnaround mode, and there's a lot of work lately, and he did acknowledge the layoffs. So I think, that's a good start. You gotta start there, and you got to acknowledge where it is. And his whole focus on the rule of threes, there's a lot of research behind threes and why it's important and all these other things. But I want to break down each one of the three, because if you're a leader, you might look at this, and he's a very polarizing person, especially with what he's done at Starbucks. And so you're going to have people who think he's the worst CEO on the planet, and I'll get messages from those people. And then you're going to have people who think he's the greatest CEO on the planet, and we just need more of that. We just need more of him, to fix all these lazy people in companies, and it'll fix our economy. And I'm going to get messages from those people because they come from both sides. But breaking down his three, his point of work harder and take ownership. I struggle with this, and I'm not an employee there, but I know some folks who are part of corporate and some who are at very senior levels. And I'm like, I don't know that work harder is necessarily the right message for people, especially because when I talk to people right now, people are exhausted. They're burned out. They feel like they're working like nobody. I don't know very many people who are like, yeah, I don't really do anything. I just kind of sit around. I have nothing to do. So telling people just work harder is layering a burden on them that doesn't really acknowledge, like, well, but we are working hard. So your solution is just do more. How does that help us? Like, it's not acknowledging the fact that, and again, if you're in turnaround, come on, you got to be able to say the things we're working hard at are not the right things. We need to work different, would be how I would frame it if I were in his position. I say, we need to work different. We need to re-examine the things that we're doing and determine whether or not they're the right things. And that's not necessarily, if you talk to people on the inside, the environment that it's in. It's not necessarily, hey, like we're because the other half take ownership. That's another part that just talking to some insiders, it's a platitude, but it's not necessarily being met with, okay, you know what? Think different and be accountable for what you do, but what needs to happen, and experiment and try things different. And ultimately what we care about is that you're improving the performance of whatever it is you're doing. And we're going to give you the autonomy. And that's where I actually think his first point and his third point are in contradiction with each other, because it's like, take ownership so long as you own it exactly the way I tell you to do. And I have been with so many companies that this is very much the message that comes from senior leaders. We want you to work harder and be autonomous and do what needs to be done to get the job done. And here's the list of all those things that we expect you to do. And don't you dare deviate from any of these. And you also can't stop doing any of the things that you were already doing. And that to me was probably the biggest point of feedback or frustration with this bold leadership message from the top, inspiring the troops and making everybody go, be thankful you're still here. Now get out there and do everything you were doing before, and then do more of the stuff that we're going to tell you to do, and make sure you do it how I tell you to do it. And then also be accountable for it. And it's like, what? Could you say more double talk in a single phrase? You literally are contradicting yourself with your messages. And that to me is probably my biggest frustration in the whole thing, is that it's like, this is not how you do it. So that's my challenge with this, is when I hear get back in the office, but also work harder and take ownership. It's like you contradicted yourself right there. I don't even need to see the SOPs or the strategies or how they're doing their rollout plan to go, if the person at the helm is telling you to run autonomously and own your work while at the same time dictating the terms and conditions of how you accomplish that, they are contradicting themselves and they don't see it. And that is highly concerning. It is also concerning because he's completely being a hypocrite on the matter, because part of his very public deal and taking the job with Starbucks was he negotiated a work from home clause in his thing where he gets access to the private jet. He gets to work remotely from his California location while Seattle is the headquarters for Starbucks. So to me, that was another one of the just really big offensive things. It's like one of your 3 points is get in the office and the whole company knows you're jet setting back and forth on the company's private jet while you work from home most of the time. That kind of stuff doesn't inspire people. It doesn't motivate people. So not only are you now contradicting yourself because you're saying, own what you do, just make sure you do it how I'm comfortable with and how I want to see it. But now you're also doing it with how I say you should do it, but I actually am not going to do it because for me, you guys, you all need to be in the office. Me, see, it's different because I'm not you. And for me, it's better if I do it this way. And the company needs to make extra money because that jet back and forth and my $113 million compensation, that's very expensive. So if you all could work harder and do more, but make sure you do it in a way that I'm comfortable with and I like, I would really appreciate that, because that is the secret to our company's success. Okay. So already I've got major issues, and this isn't just well, Christopher, you're just an advocate for remote working. No, actually, I'm not as much of an advocate for remote working as people think. I'm more of a let's determine what needs to get done and then actually hire people who are capable of figuring out the best way to accomplish that, empower, encourage, and trust them to do it, and then get out of their way. I've had plenty of people in my teams where I've been remote and I've had people say, I really need to have my team here, and here's why, Christopher. And I go, it's your team. If that's what you feel needs to get done and you can articulate that and you're not destroying the team culture doing it, I'm not going to say, I don't think you do, and let's argue about that. I'm going to say, you're accountable for it. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to see your engagement scores. And if you're not getting better outcomes for dragging people in and I'm approving more expenses for flying your people into a location, I'm going to have a conversation with you about how effective your strategy is, but you're accountable for it. So if that's what you think needs to get done, then go do it. And I think that's to me, not only the contradiction in himself, but the contradiction that sends when you say, do this, but I'm also going to contradict it, and I'm also not going to do it myself. Now, the other one that really bugged me about it was just saying leaders need to lead. You can't define things with the word that is the word. Get in shape by getting in shape. Okay, like what does that mean? I don't know. That doesn't give me anything tangible and because the rest of his message was so contradictory, he's not even modeling it well. So he says, lead, we need you to lead, leaders. So leadership. Okay. And it's like lead leadership. How? Like by saying something and doing the opposite, by not being clear? Am I supposed to give really clear terms and dictate things to people, or am I supposed to empower them? I don't understand what you're asking me to do. And it's very confusing. And honestly, well, what he said, leaders need to lead, would probably preach well from a stage and people would clap and go, yeah, good job. That's right. Leaders do need to lead. Yeah, duh. Of course they do. Of course. Eat healthy if you want to be healthy. Yeah, that's right. I still have no idea what to do with that. I don't know what that means because I'm watching you eat Doritos and pizza and also drinking sparkling spring water and getting a, I don't know, you're drinking a wheatgrass shot with it. Like, what do you mean eat healthy to get healthy? I'm not sure what kind of message you're sending. And I think that's where if I was at Starbucks, I would be left more confused and frustrated by this message. So I actually thought it was really interesting. And granted, the article where I first read about it was with Inc. They pointed out a lot of this stuff, but it was just interesting that they even framed the article as these are key leadership lessons. I'm like, key leadership lessons? To me, this thing is a masterclass on confusing the snot out of your employees on what it means to lead. Work hard, take ownership, go into the office. Those are leadership lessons? I mean, the greatest leaders I know go, I don't want you working hard. I want you working really smart. I mean, work smarter, not harder. Isn't that also like a leadership platitude that we throw around? So, we just chopped off half of it. We don't need you to work smart. We have AI now. Just work harder. What is that? I mean, is that what you mean? Take ownership, just not your own way. Take ownership our way. Own what we want you to own. Like that's a leadership lesson. Like that's a key leadership lesson. That's not a key leadership lesson. That's a lesson in hypocrisy. Get back in the office like I don't. Oh, okay. I read it and I was like, this is key leadership lessons? This is not key leadership lessons. This is not how you lead a company. This is a lesson in what not to do. But I wanted to add this week to call attention to it because I know I'm going to get people who light me up for this. And they're going to say all the things, well, Christopher, you just don't agree with his leadership style. I don't agree with what he's doing as a leader because it's not how you lead. That's why. It has nothing to do with his leadership style. There are certain people who firmly believe you need to be in the office. And they live and breathe it. And they are in the office and they are engaged with their teams and they have built a culture around it. I may not agree with it, but I go, there's someone who firmly believes it and they don't deviate from it and they hold firm to it. I think it's limiting them, but they are leading it. Saying get in the office while taking your private jet and working from home most of the week. Yeah, that's not a good leadership lesson. Telling people to just work harder. No, at a time when you're in turnaround mode and what you're doing is failing miserably. Doing more of that. What is the term for when you do the same thing more and expect a different result? Can't remember the word for that. It'll come back to me though. It'll come back, I'm pretty sure. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we just got to be so careful with this because I see this kind of pump and dump stuff that it trends all over the internet. It's, yada, yada. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is nothing. This is absolute nothingness. Okay, I'm going to stop because I'm all amped up about it. But if you follow the CEO of Starbucks, I'm not telling you you've got to never be in an office. I'm not telling you that encouraging people to take ownership and responsibility for their work. That is a great leadership principle. Make sure you're creating an environment where they actually can do it. And don't say it if you don't mean it. Don't say take ownership if you actually want them to do exactly what you want them to do. If that's all you want to do, then say that. Say, I don't want you to take ownership. I don't want you thinking critically. I want you doing what I want you doing. Okay, so do it. And if you deviate, we're going to have issues. And guess what? There are times when that is what you have to do as a leader. Seasons. It's not a great leadership strategy long-term, but there might be a season you need to do that. But then do that. If truly work harder is what you need, goes back to that. Hey, we do not have room right now to be experimenting. The plane is falling apart right now. We got to get the doors and the wings and the engines back on. That's what needs to happen right now. And we just need to be pushing relentlessly at that. And I know there's a lot of good ideas that are going to come up. We got to say no to those right now. Okay. All right. We need to work hard on these key things and we need to go for it. And that's it. Okay. And that's going to require us to be in the office because, and I'm going to be right there alongside you because that's how serious this is. If that's what he was doing, as much as I might disagree with him, I would go, that is a leadership lesson. This is not a leadership lesson. This is a message from a coward who just is wanting people to do everything, and he's going to not get any results from it. But whatever, you can hold me accountable if I'm wrong, but I've seen this too many times. All right. So the last one isn't actually necessarily brand new, because Stephen Hawking isn't, I don't think he's alive either. I'm pretty sure he passed. But anyway, Stephen Hawking, brilliant physicist. Lots of things that I would not agree with him on, but he would be somebody I have a ton of respect for. Very intelligent person, thought deeply about a lot of things. And anyway, I came across this article that happened to be talking about the predictions for the end of the world and what Stephen Hawking's predictions were. And I was like, is this a new thing? Because he's not still making predictions. But I dug into it, and it caught my attention because it was blowing up. And I had a bunch of people share it with me and some other things. And anyway, so I was like, so what exactly was his prediction for how the world would end? And how did he think all this was going to come, to conclude? And really what it was that, by 2600, the earth was going to become so uninhabitable. It was just going to completely either be obliterated by asteroid strikes or be completely ablaze, burned up. We would not be able to survive with where the planet was headed. So he had a lot of thoughts on, the doomsday predictions of how things were going to end. And so as I was reading it, of course, a lot of the articles related to this are talking about how the earth is heating up and how we're not taking care of things. And, we have all these forest fires, and it's only a matter of time before humanity and society as we know it on earth is gone. And I thought about it, and I went, okay, even as I read through some of his predictions and the details of it, I went, let's entertain some of this stuff. Let's imagine. And again, he was pretty firm on some of his predictions. And, depending on how you feel about him, you can go find data that will validate his predictions, and you'll feel really good about it and be convinced. And we'll write articles like the ones I read that said, this is for sure how it's going to happen. And this is how we know. And look what just happened last week. And this is why it's yet another indicator that happens here. And then you're going to find people who vehemently disagree with him. And they're going to find all the reasons to poke holes in what his prediction was. And they're going to, say, nah, because this. And yes, you're going to have your straw man exercises where it's completely laughable how people are going about. But then you're also going to have really thoughtful, well-intended, critically thinking people who look at this stuff and say, I think, we really do see things. And I do think we are headed on this trajectory. And you're going to have other people who have thought critically and analytically on things. And they're going to go, I've looked at the same data and have come to a different conclusion. And so it left me kind of thinking on all this, also because I happen to be reading through the book of Revelation right now. And, it's kind of like, okay, I don't know that I've ever encountered anybody who says the world is not going to come to an end, at some point, right? We'll argue about the dates. We'll argue about the how. We'll argue about who's responsible and what things we should do to prolong or, mitigate it. But it seems to be a pretty common thing, which then left me sitting there going, why do we spend so much time thinking about this, and arguing about it? And I mean, I engaged and talked with some people who just tearing each other apart over the details of this. And I went, why are we so upset and angry with each other about these? And to be fair, okay, because I know there's some of you who might still be tuned in with me and listening to this going, how dare you, Christopher? Don't you know that this is what we're doing and why we have to take it? And I'm not saying, hey, don't have convictions. I'm not saying, it's just going to do what it does, so who cares? No, there's a reason I'm so passionate about making sure we don't let AI annihilate humanity, that we don't end up destroying ourselves with it, because I believe there's steps we can take to move things in a positive direction. What I don't understand is when we hold to it so tightly, we end up living miserable, angry lives on things that are completely outside of our control, and losing sleep and stressing and destroying relationships. And I just don't understand it. And I don't understand it really. In one of the ways is because growing up in a funeral home, I can tell you right now, no matter who you talk to, very few people, I mean, there's some, but very few people think any of these like doomsday predictions are going to happen in their lifetime. And what I can say is we're all going to die. You can believe some of the claims that, no, we're not. The AI is going to fix the mortality clause, and we're going to like. You're not. You're not. Even if there's a way to supposedly download your consciousness and put you in a computer, the you that you are would be dead, and there would be something else in that. So you're going to die. You're going to die. And you're going to die before anything that Stephen Hawking's or any of these doomsday predictions have to say on the matter. And people don't take that seriously. And that's the part that's very confusing to me, is we will wage war over an apocalypse that might happen in hundreds of years that we really can't even predict or say with 100% certainty this is what it will be and how. And yet we will destroy ourselves and everyone around us over something that absolutely will happen. Like, you are going to be dead in less, I don't even know how old you are, but in less than 80 years. Let's just say that. I don't think I have anybody under the demographic of 20. So the probability you're going to even be around in 80 years, many of you, much less than that. I hold loosely to this stuff. I mean, it's fine. I regularly talk with people about, I get asked all the time, do you think we'll end up destroying humanity with AI? Here's my opinion on it this week. These are some of the things I'm thinking about next week. These are some of the risks I think we've got to mitigate. Sure. I enjoy engaging in that. I enjoy engaging in the thought experiments. I posted about it today and wrote about it the other day. I thoroughly enjoy experimenting and discussing these things, even with people who don't agree with me. But I don't want to choke them. I don't want to go after them and, terminate them because they won't agree with me. I just go, interesting. Interesting, that's your take on it. Interesting, that's how you've interpreted it, or where your head's at, or how that's affecting the things you care about and what you're doing with things. Okay. And I hold loosely to it. I mean, because like I said at the beginning of this thing, every week I record this. And if I were to go back and listen to the previous weeks, I'd go, yeah, I mean, I know more now that makes me think slightly differently on what I really was quite convinced of last week. And we keep seeing that with everything as we look around. So I don't understand why. And I think that would be my encouragement to any of you is be careful with some of this stuff. Be careful how stressed out you're getting about things that are completely outside your control. Be careful that you're not destroying the relationships you have with people around you because they don't quite agree with you on your interpretation of how things are going to work out. It's not worth it. And you're missing out on so much of what life has to offer. And so is Stephen Hawking's correct? Will the world burn up? Do we have to explore and move to another planet in the next, 500 years, or all be destroyed? I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment. It's interesting to wonder how it might play out as I read Revelation and see how the Bible describes the apocalypse. You're like, okay, I mean, I don't know what that means. I don't know exactly what that looks like. But I see people trying to go, well, this character's that, and this means this, and this is going to happen in this year. And I go, we've been saying that for how long? And how many times has somebody said something that's been wrong? And then it's like, oh God, I can't admit I was wrong. Maybe. And instead of going, maybe that was a foolish exercise to get so confident about, we're like, nah, I just got it wrong. I bet on the wrong horse. So I'm going to find another horse, instead of going, why are we at the horse races? Or we're at the horse races, but like, how about we just enjoy the people we're sitting in our box with? Like, I don't know. That's where I'm at when I saw this, because I just saw so much intensity, and I watch people just shred each other over these kinds of things. And I don't understand I understand why, and I also don't. And I would, I guess, conclude by encouraging you to not be afraid to lean into and think about these things, but to do so carefully and hold on to it loosely. Because chances of you actually experiencing the apocalypse, I'm thinking of like the MasterCard, commercials, like chances of you experiencing and living through the apocalypse, 0.000000001%. Chances you will be dead in the next 80 years, 99.9999999%. Chances your life will be exponentially more miserable if you sit and fight and tear people apart over things that you actually don't know and can't control. 100%. So come on, let's just think differently about it. And I don't know, you feel free to share your thoughts. You do whether I tell you to or not. But that's where I was in a reflective spot as I was reading about what I think is the late Stephen Hawking's and his reflections on this. So with that, I will hope you have a great rest of your week, great weekend. Whenever you listen to this, I hope you have a great week, and we will see you on the other side.